It is not very often that we witness officers of the law being arrested by other police, but there is always a first time for everything. Therefore, continue watching to find out what happened to this fake cop who was caught and arrested. Jaredson Mackey. When policemen from Ackworth pulled over a guy from Kennesaw, he was wearing a police uniform, driving a vehicle that was equipped with emergency lights, and displaying a badge on his person. The guy informed the police that he worked for the Georgia Department of Transportation as a highway emergency response operator, which is an employee that is sent out to address traffic-related issues around the metro Atlanta area. On the other hand, the authorities assert that he was a liar. According to a statement released by the Ackworth Police Department, 33-year-old Jaredson Mackey was taken into custody and charged with the felony offense of impersonating a public official or employee. In addition, law enforcement authorities reported seeing Mackey operating a Dodge Charger equipped with flashing emergency lights. According to the allegations made by the authorities, the police pulled him up after he incorrectly drove out of a parking lot on Lake Road. Mackey was wearing a law enforcement outfit that featured a duty belt and other equipment when the police officers came across him. According to Corporal Eric Mistretta, a spokesperson for the Ackworth Police Department, the suspect was not armed. However, he did have a holster on his waist for a revolver and was carrying more magazines. The investigators do not know where Mackey received the police attire. However, Mistretta pointed out that it was not an Ackworth police uniform, despite the fact that it resembled the navy blue type that is used by Ackworth cops and officers from many other agencies.
This is my company. I'm an off-duty hero operator. This is my company. Yeah, I do it for no details.
Mackey presented the cops with a credential and informed them that he was an off-duty hero with the Georgia Department of Transportation. According to the police, the officers originally issued Mackey a citation for the unauthorized operation of an emergency vehicle and then released him from the site. The investigation was carried on by the Ackworth Police Department, and they eventually acquired a warrant for Mackey's arrest on the felony accusation. According to the online prison records, Mackey handed himself into the police and was released from jail after posting a bail of $2,500. It turned out that the Charger was a car that had been decommissioned from service by another police department and had all of its law enforcement badges and insignia removed. The authorities from Ackworth do not know how Mackey came to possess the automobile, but according to Mistretta, the investigators are reaching out to other authorities to inquire as to whether or not they have dealt with calls of a similar kind. The fact that he was released from prison on bond is perfectly acceptable, and it is something that may occur. Nonetheless, impersonating a law enforcement official is regarded as a misdemeanor offense in the majority of states. If a person is found guilty of committing this kind of offense, the laws and regulations in the majority of states provide that they might spend up to 2 years in jail. Thus, that's a really significant chunk of time right there. And a person, in this case, Jaredson Mackey, who is being accused, could be required to perform both of these things in certain circumstances. Also, in certain instances, a felony charge may be brought against an individual rather than a simple misdemeanor charge if the circumstances surrounding the crime are considered to be of a more serious nature. Therefore, you might anticipate an escalation to a felony charge. For instance, if any firearms were engaged in your conduct while impersonating another person throughout the incident. In other words, if convicted of a felony, a person might spend up to 5 years in prison and be subject to even more severe fines and restitution requirements. The severity of these punishments is determined by the decision reached by the court. Also, it is critical for a person convicted of this kind of offense to locate legal representation that may assist in lessening the severity of any charges. If you want to get the most out of working with an attorney, it's important to make sure you can pay the bond amount and have no restrictions on your freedom leading up to the day of your trial. When it comes to the definition of impersonating a police officer, the precise wording of the laws that govern each state in the United States may somewhat vary from one another. In a more general sense, however, the operation of each rule is very comparable to the others. In the context of this unlawful behavior, the term police officer might refer to any figure of authority that is analogous to an officer of the law. This involves disguising oneself as a member of the FBI, DEA, Secret Service, or any other agency associated with the enforcement of the law. If a person verbally identifies oneself to another individual as a member of the law enforcement community, they run the risk of being convicted of this offense. In any circumstance, it is against the law to give the impression that one is an official when one is not. As another kind of impersonation, a person may also be found guilty of this offense if they wear police-related pieces of clothing, such as uniforms, identification badges, patches, or buttons like this fake cop that got busted by Georgia police. It makes no difference whether these objects are authentic components of an official outfit or just replicas of such costumes. The meaning behind anything is what is important. In a similar vein, any activities performed to imply that one's car is a police vehicle are in violation of the law and subject to severe punishment. This might involve using a siren or mounting a light or other signaling device on the roof of a vehicle of any kind. Also, it is against the law to use these instruments to pull someone over or to coerce them into yielding. In addition, while impersonating a law enforcement official, it is illegal in the state of North Carolina to compel people to relocate from one area to another, detain someone, or search a car or premises without first obtaining a warrant. These are some of the particular activities that might lead to a conviction. Therefore, if you take a look at the fake police officer who was apprehended by the authorities in Georgia, you'll see that he had a lot of the same characteristics as a real officer. As a result, if you want to avoid being fooled by a similar situation, you should be mindful of the advice that will be provided in a second. But before we get into it, it's essential to understand why some individuals pose as police officers. There are many different motivations, but one common goal is to feel more powerful than the people around them. It not only makes it simpler for them to breach the law, but it also gives them more influence over the people. It is not always easy to recognize the telltale symptoms of a fake police officer, because it is not difficult to impersonate a police officer or to get a badge thanks to the availability of year-round police costumes and to advances in technology. However, imposters may be identified if one is acquainted with the uniform and insignia of the Georgia Police Department. So, let's see how you can spot a fake cop. When a law enforcement officer approaches your vehicle or residence, they will knock on the door and announce their presence. Be on the lookout if this does not happen, since this is potentially a useful warning indicator. Asking a police officer why they are at your door before you answer it is a good idea, since they are there for a reason and you should know what that reason is. Also, there shouldn't be any trouble understanding the police when they describe the purpose of their visit. When you are in your own car, the simplest method to determine whether or not you are being pulled over by a law enforcement officer is to look at the vehicle that the officer is driving. They will pull you over using a siren that is easily recognizable. And if you are unfamiliar with the appearance of a Georgia police cruiser, you should take some time to get comfortable with it. Also, if you are pulled over by an older car that is in poor condition, it is very unlikely that the person behind the wheel is a law enforcement officer. In this case, you should phone the police. In addition, those who pretend to be police officers are more prone to prey on persons who seem to be readily duped, particularly younger people and the elderly. Even if you don't belong to any of these categories, it's still important to keep an eye out for other people and do what you can to help make the communities a more secure environment for everyone. So, always dial 911 if you are unsure of what to do. It doesn't matter where in the United States you reside. Pretending to be a law enforcement officer is always a very severe offense. And that wraps things up. We appreciate you taking the time to watch this video. Please hit the subscribe button, and we'll see you in the next one.